Hi, everyone. Hi, Dad.
Hello, Molly.
How are you?
I am excellent. Thank you for asking.
I love that background you've got there.
Yes,
That
and
looks like from our Dublin trip.
yep, that's the long room at Trinity College. It's got an amazing library. And the most important thing about that library, Molly, you may or may not remember
Yep.
how the books are filed.
No, I don't remember.
They're
What was that?
filed by size. The biggest books are on the bottom,
Wow.
the smallest ones are on top. And so if you have
Wow.
to find something in that library, you go to the desk and they know where to. So you need to know how big the book is, probably.
I remember also that library had the Book of Kells, I think, in it, which was a
Yeah.
Celtic book for the Celtic tribes, which I thought was so neat. But anyways, it's actually a perfect fitting for this series that we're doing together because behind you are books of wisdom, and you will be providing us wisdom and sharing your stories. So I appreciate that.
A relatively smaller quantity, but yes.
Well, I wanted to share a little setup here. I came up with this idea about a year ago, and was thinking about how I could capture, Dad, all of your stories in one place. There's so many of them, and my brain doesn't hold them in an exactness kind of way. It is a very kind of artsy, creative way my brain holds the story. And so my hope is to capture your history and all the amazing life experiences you and Mom and now Mary are having. Um, Also, to get deeper on some stuff that maybe I've just never asked you about could be really interesting, right? You've been my coach in many things tangibly. Were my coach in soccer and basketball at one point, bunch of different things. But you continue to coach me in so many things in life, which I very much appreciate. And I'm so grateful you're here with us and able to continue to impart wisdom.
Oh,
Um, Also very much enjoying the writing of your first book, which you're actively working on publishing, and that's super exciting. So lots to explore together. I'm wondering, Dad, how you're feeling about doing this project together and what your thoughts are about it.
well, I've never tried to do anything like this. I have a list of topics that I put down to do a memoir, and I joined the Memoir of Society of America or whatever they're called, and
Cool.
they off seminars and but I haven't started because I've been distracted. I'm doing the second, what you're talking about. I finished the first novel. I'm
Yes.
working on the sequel to it. I'm working on that, and I'm teaching some groups on writing here and doing some leadership things there, and so I haven't been able to focus back on my own. So I'm glad you're doing this, and who knows where we're going to go with it.
Who
But
knows where we're going to go? That's the exciting part. It's all
yeah,
magic. So
yeah,
hopefully what we'll get out of this is getting to know each other even better than we currently do.
right.
But I'm very excited. So let's start at the beginning, Dad, if we
Okay.
can. So where or how did you get your name?
Well, it's George Elwood Kaufman the third. That's a Roman numeral three, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandfather was George Elwood Kaufman, and my father was George Elwood Kaufman Jr. And I was just George Elwood Kaufman. I think they wrote 3RD after my name on the birth certificate.
What does
And
that
some,
mean, Dad? 3RD.
well, it's the third.
Oh, RD. Sorry. I just
Yeah,
saw
I
like
know.
the signs with an
Small,
RD and my brain didn't connect it.
small
Oh,
RD.
got
Yeah, I
it.
know.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay.
Get it? So somewhere in life, I thought, huh. So for a long time, I was Georgie Kaufman Jr. because my dad was senior because my grandfather passed. So we moved up. But
Yeah.
I realized later that you don't do that, but I didn't know that then. So then I finally put the third in, probably when I got to college or somewhere before that. And so that's how I got there. So I'm
That's
GK the third.
GEK the third. That's really great. Um, and where did you grow up?
Well, um, in Northeast Pennsylvania on a farm called in a place called Sugarloaf in a valley that's called the Sugarloaf Valley or the Cunningham Valley, depending where you live there. And it is where Interstate 80 and 81 intersect, right in the heart of it. Although
Mhm.
when I grew up, there were no interstates. But it's a beautiful little valley. It's a rural area. And my dad was a farmer at that point in his life.
Mhm.
My mom was a housekeeper, did canning and cooking and all that stuff. and eventually cleaned houses for extra money.
Mhm.
Yeah, when I
That's that's amazing. Now, where were your parents and also grandparents from?
well, my mom and dad were both from the valley. Grandparents, I guess they were from around there too, same place.
Yeah,
Um, my mom was a Knorr family, Knorr, and Rittenhouse was her mother. So that's the
right.
two sides. And I was Kaufman and Kissenweather.
Mhm. And did Nana being my grandmother, dad's mom, did Nana, and Pap's family both come from farming roots, or did they have other kinds of occupations to report?
Well, the Kaufmans came over in like 1852 to Luzerne County, which is what the county we lived in.
Mhm.
And they were farmers early on, I think. And the others, I honestly haven't paid much attention to them. Well, Rittenhouses were an old historical family in Philly. They were paper makers and the first and only
Rittenhouse Square, that's all
were the
connected, right,
first
Dad?
paper makers in the colonies for 40 years, the only paper makers.
Mhm,
The British sought to control the supply of paper. So any paper that people got, they had to buy from England. But
mhm.
the Rittenhouse had started a paper mill in the Philadelphia area, which was the only one during the Revolution, the only source of paper. So
And Dad, that was at that Rittenhouse Village we went to last year, correct? Is that where they
yep,
were based when they did that mill?
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
So neat. I'm just so uh uh grateful that we were able to see where they live, just to have like that, as you know, am a lover of history, and people's history to me is just the whole thing. I always love hearing people's stories, and what a
And
cool thing to see those old homes. It was
that was the
awesome.
1600s when they were here. And David Rittenhouse, who was one of the children's children at one point, was our first astronomer in the United States. He was an inventor, a clockmaker. He was a contemporary of Franklin Jefferson. He improved the Franklin stove, made it more efficient. I read a history where Jefferson talked about the stove that Rittenhouse did.
So
So,
cool.
and then he was the first director of the U.S. Mint under George Washington. So he was a prominent scientist, but never became as famous as Franklin. Well, he probably shouldn't, but he was in the colonies. He was much more prominent
It
than,
sounds like he was kind of a big deal in that era,
uh,
right?
he was much more prominent in the era than he is today from then. Yeah.
Now, Dad, when you think back to kind of your earliest childhood memories, what do you remember from being a kid growing up on the farm? I mean, anything you would share. I'm just curious.
Well, I think the things that pop immediately into mind is I have a bunch of friends that we would ride our bikes around the valley and do things, go places and fishing and play and all that. And all kinds of adventures, sleigh riding on the hills. And we
But
took,
you had a bike back then, Dad.
oh yeah, we did.
Wow, that's cool.
Before that, we had wagons, little wagons that we'd ride them around everywhere. But
What?
the roads were so empty, and you could go lie down almost and take a nap in them. It was not quite, but almost. But the bikes were pretty good. We would take so it would snow out, and there was a hill across the road, and we would take a roof tin from the barn, a metal corrugated roof tin, maybe about 6 feet long, and
Mhm.
put a rope on it, twine, and we would bend the front up and we would ride it down the hill. I mean, these days everybody would flip out because you could have gotten badly cut. These are
You
sharp.
could have got some serious cut on that, no
We
doubt.
just did it. And nobody ever got cut badly.
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of just figure it out. Now, Dad, would you just share your birth order and kind of your siblings as a collective in terms of
My
age?
oldest was my brother Dick Richard, and he was 10 years older than me. And I'm 80. I was born in 43, so he was born in 33. Then his sister was 3, 4 years younger, was Joan, and she was 2 years behind him, I guess. I'm sorry. And then she's 89 right now. And then I was third, I was born in 43. And then my younger sister's 4 years younger than me,
And
and
Karen?
born in 47. Yeah, so that was it. So we were on the farm. Some other memories I remember is we would, throughout the year, My parents, my brother really worked on the farm a lot when he was around.
Mhm.
My dad was basically the foreman. My uncle owned that farm and some other farms and became a big farmer for the area.
This is Uncle Carl?
Uncle Carl, yeah. So my dad was sort of his foreman. When seasons came where you needed things picked by hand, there'd be potatoes, cabbage, corn, maybe. I'm missing something else. Tomatoes.
Mhm.
Plant them or harvest them. We would hire crews of people and we would call them the Polish ladies from Freeland. And my dad would go up and bring them back in a truck full of ladies wearing babushkas around their head and these big full skirts. And they'd all
Wow.
speak Polish.
Mhm.
My dad could speak a little Polish with them and they'd come and work in the fields and they would work all day and just talk with each other in Polish. It was odd to watch, but they sure worked. So
Wow.
whenever they tried to get me, I did stuff. But as I got older, as much as I could skip out on working in the farm,
Mhm.
unlike my
You had
brother.
other plans and had other things you wanted to do. It wasn't so much like sitting around, you just had other things you were drawn to, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
My older sister and brother worked a lot on the farm.
Yeah.
I worked some. I had to go work and pick potatoes and tomatoes and stuff. And then one thing I did have 450 chickens to raise when I was a teenager. That I had to get up every morning and open the nests, give them food and water, and then go to school. And then at night come back and collect all the eggs and put them in, take them into the house every day. Couldn't miss that.
Mhm.
So I did that regardless of what I did. When high school was like 10 miles away.
Yeah,
So
when you were little though, because Pap-Up, my grandfather's, we referred to him as Pap-Up, but, when Pap-Up and Nana, um, obviously they had the farm from the time you were born through, of course, before that, obviously, before that. Um, but, do you remember working on the farm when you were younger? And what would have those functions had been like from a very, like what age do you start working on a farm when you're part of a farming community family like that? I imagine you could do things when you were 5 or 6 or 7 or, even if it was stuff indoor. What do you remember?
I remember they would have me when we baled hay, which was or straw, which was like straw was after you had wheat, you took
Mhm.
the wheat out, the stalks laid there, those were made into straw bales. That's soft. You could lie around, it didn't bother you. Whereas hay was prickly and it had dust and would make you sneeze.
Yeah.
But when those were baled, the tractor would pull a wagon through the field and everybody would work and toss them all up and stack them up on the wagon, 5, 6, 7, 8 bales high. I
Yeah.
can't remember the number. And they let me drive. I drove the tractor when my feet couldn't touch the floor.
Oh my God.
I would steer the tractor. They'd say, "You ready?" And I go, "Your motor's running." They would push there was a clutch, was a big pull. They'd push it in and it would go. And I would just steer it and they had the speed set right. And I just kept it said, just keep it straight. And they would load it all up. And then they'd help me turn it at the other end until I could do it myself. And then we come back. And
How old do you suppose you were at the
my feet
time?
were hanging this far above the floor. So
I know. What do you think you were at that? Were you 6 or 7 or what?
5 or 6, I don't know.
Wow.
I
That's
mean,
amazing.
when I went to get my driver's license at 16, the first time I had driven trucks and cars and things all over the place, and I took the driver's test, and the policeman failed me. I passed the written one, and
Yeah.
I said, "What? Now I wasn't a rude guy. It's like, why would you fail me?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Because you're too confident. Come back next week like a beginner, and we'll pass you." And I was like,
Wow.
so I mean, so I did a K turn. I just went back right in. And he thought I need to be like a beginner. And I hesitated to tell him I'd been driving for like more than 10 years already.
I mean,
It,
it's kinda crazy at the time. You would imagine a lot of people who worked on farms had their kids driving all different types of vehicles just to
I
get.
took my test in town where most of the kids didn't do that stuff. So
Well, I don't know, it's kind of an ironic, connection point, but, if you remember when I took my driving test, I took the writing test and, of course, like, got 100 or whatever, got a perfect score, and then when I took the driving test, it was out in Hazleton, out the back, up the mountain past the what is now, like, right past the Longhouse restaurant or whatever the
yeah,
one, bar you go like, that kind of grill right there
up in
above
the
the whole
80s.
thing. And the course was just a big parking lot. So I do everything that they said, but when they said, I don't know, turn left here. Well, there was no one around me, so I didn't put the turn signal on. And I failed because I didn't put the turn signal on. And
Oh
I
my,
was like, afterwards, I said to them, well, don't you do that for safety reasons for other people around? And there's nobody here. They were like, yes, but you still have to do it. And I was like, oh. So it's just interesting that you and I both failed that the
both
first
failed.
time. And I
I
was like,
forgot that.
okay, this is silly, but
We both got failed because of not really us.
no, no, yeah. I mean, it wasn't the mechanics of what you did. It was more your confidence, which is interesting that someone would do that. So, oh, that's so interesting. What do you remember from your child? Like, what are some of the happier things that just brought you joy or made you happy when you were a little kid?
I mean, I played lots of baseball, and
Where
so
would you play on the farm itself, or would
we
you
had
just?
we had a little tiny field at the house there, and if there were a few of us and we were younger, we could play it. When we
Yeah,
got older, we'd be hitting the ball too far. But when we were little, I'd 6, 7, 8, 9, we could play right out near the barn.
yeah, that's
One
so
time
cool.
we did put a ball through the glass of the door, and that was a,
Oh,
oh
that
no,
not that didn't go over well, I bet.
it didn't. But that was pretty good. And then we played Cowboys a lot, and then I we rode the bikes a lot and played baseball. I threw the ball against the front steps, and it was just I'd be out in the road on the bank opposite outside of the road, and I pitched the ball at the steps, and I had a whole game I played by myself that would if it hit the step right, it would fly back in the air. If it hit it wrong, it would bounce back, and then I would field it, and I'd throw it back, and then all that was a sequence of a play where I was being all the players, and I would play with all the lineups. I knew my Dodgers were my team because they were on the local channel. So I knew all the players, I knew all their numbers, I knew everything, I knew the pitchers. I'd try to imitate the pitchers. As I think about it now, because I think the lefties, I actually would throw the ball lefty.
Mhm.
I just remembered that now. But anyhow, so I played baseball myself.
Wait, are you saying you threw it lefty or you
I
remember
think I
pitchers
think
throwing left?
when I had a lefty pitcher, there were a
Yeah,
couple lefty pitchers we had that I did. I think I did. But I never did that rest of my I mean, I did when I was an adult. I'm ambidextrous now, but not when I was little. But I think I did it then because I was imitating the pitchers.
it's really interesting. I have so many questions. One, can you, when you said they were on the local channel, the Dodgers were on a local channel, we talking about radio or actual
TV,
television?
no TV. It was coming in.
Okay.
The Dodger games from Ebbets Field came from Brooklyn when they were in Brooklyn.
And
And
how old were you when you guys got a TV? What would you said you were? Because I do remember you recall sharing radio a little bit with me too, but
well, I
when,
think we got the first thing we did, first thing we got was we got bathrooms in the house and we got heat in the house. And then, so that was probably, I was probably 7, 8 years old then, 9 years old.
wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah, because and then we got TVs. So you might ask if, I'm saying you
Or
might,
you might tell me, go right
I'm gonna tell
ahead.
you. So, one might ask such things as, so if you didn't have a bathroom in that house, well, we had something called an outhouse, which meant, of
Yeah.
course, was outside the house. And then you might say, well, what did you use if you didn't go out of the house? Well, they had these, we called them pots. Some people call them chamber pots,
Mhm,
but there are only limited ones of those. The kids didn't get pots. My parents had a pot under their bed. And my
mhm,
grandfather, when he was alive, he had a pot. But
mhm.
so, and then in the morning, my mother would empty those things outside. I don't want to get too far into this, but
Yeah.
before we go to sleep at night, we would have to go to the bathroom out to the outhouse with flashlights, which was, I don't know, 100 feet from the house and behind the house. And in the winter, I can remember with Karen and my younger sister and she's 4 years younger, we put on our snowsuits and our boots and our flashlights and go
Right.
out to the outhouse. We're talking 10 degrees, 0 degrees, snow, wind, and you still had to do it. So we'd go out there and we had to deal with all that in the dark with flashlights. Now our outhouse was nice because it had 3 holes,
Mhm,
and 2 adult-sized ones and one's lower, smaller for a little child.
mhm.
And it had Sears Roebuck catalogs that you could use for toilet tissue.
Oh my gosh.
but you had to crinkle it both directions, or it would hurt your bottom because it would be pointy paper. So I
You
remember,
shared that in your novel, which I thought was so interesting. I was
yeah,
gonna
I did
ask you
too. Oh,
about
you
it.
saw that, huh? I
I
forgot.
did, yeah.
That's what I did. So, yeah, we would do that. And so you come in and it would be difficult.
Mhm.
So that was an interesting part of it. And then it was so cold, there was ice on the windows. So you could scratch the ice off the windows. But we slept with lots of covers. I mean, just stacks of covers. And I don't remember ever really being cold, but it was to get out of bed was cold.
It was very cold.
Then in the kitchen, we had a coal stove upstairs that heated, but that thing was insulated and there were no storm windows. Downstairs, we had two stoves, and the kitchen stove is where we'd go in the morning, sit there, open the oven door, put our feet in the oven, and sit there and warm up and do our homework and eat our stuff. And then when we would take baths in the kitchen, so there was a bathtub, a metal tub.
Like a metal, like just like a metal tub
Yeah,
thing.
maybe like that big, and we would get in it. But and I think my mom and dad used it too. So I've seen, but I'm not sure about this, that they used it first, but I never saw them take a bath.
Yeah,
And we used it. And then there's the old saying, don't throw the baby out with the bath, because
yeah.
everybody down, the youngest one got to use the bath last, I
That's
think,
so interesting.
to it
Oh my
all.
God.
So we were there in that kitchen, but that was part of it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing all that. The other thing I wanted to touch on was this bit about sports a little bit. Obviously, our family, you and mom and the four of us, being the second oldest myself and older sister Kate, and then Bry and Jerry, all of us played sports and we cared about sports a lot. And you were our coach in so many things, and we talked about sports a lot and experienced it a lot. Um, and I always remember you sharing how, I mean, the four of us were blessed with being athletic and having the ability to do it and play. And I remember you talking about growing up and how much you had to practice to do, to be good at stuff, and you would work hard at it, and you would always tell us about the value of doing that, right? And I was just thinking about sports for you growing up. What was it like? Obviously, you're starting to share with us about baseball and practicing with yourself. And so I'm not surprised to hear your creative brain is engaged with sports and you're playing a game, you're a one-man band, but you're playing all the roles and doing
Yep,
all that.
it was.
Um, just curious about sports growing up.
Well, so there was not a lot of sympathy,
Hmm.
support for sports. The farm was the farm, and the work had to be done, and it was a tough thing. I mean, my dad in the summer would work really long days, and they'd work 6 days.
Like, what would that be, Dad? What would be a typical day for Pep?
Well, I don't know, 7 in the morning till dark.
Right.
So 7 till 8:30 at night, and he might come in and eat and go back out. Depends when you were harvesting, you got that done.
Hmm.
Regardless, you did everything you could. You had extra lunches. You took them. You ate them right there. Um, and then they even might work Sundays. Then the wintertime, when there wasn't much, they would work in the potato storage and grade potatoes and be inside, and it wouldn't was nothing like that at all. But
Hmm.
so I mean that was a tough deal. I basket. So there was not a lot of support. I played baseball. I made the All-Star team my next to last year in Babe Ruth, and I was a center fielder, which is one of the place sort of was my idol, played for the Dodgers.
Hmm.
And so I was good. And then the next year
What year was that, Dad?
that would have been probably about 14, so it would have been
Okay.
seven.
High school-ish.
No, well, 14 years old, junior high, I guess. Um,
Okay. Junior high.
And
Okay.
so it was like a 3-year span. The third year, the year I mean, I already was all-star center fielder. The third year, our valley didn't have a team, so I couldn't
Oh,
play. I'd had to go to town, and there was no way to go to town. I didn't drive. No one's going to take me.
yeah.
So that year, that team went all the way to Washington State to the national finals, and I would have been the center fielder on it. Out of that team, two made the pros. I mean, one
Wow.
guy was
Holy
in the world.
smokes. You
One
never
guy was
told me that.
one guy was the most valuable player in the World Series. Tommy Matchik played for Detroit, and
Wow.
a couple other guys were also in Major League Baseball from that team.
Wow.
Well, I might have been. I was our center fielder, which was one of the key spots. So who
Mhm.
knows? Who knows? I don't know.
You
But
remember how you felt that time?
I felt a bit deprived. I thought I would have been good, but who knows?
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. And, all right, let's just move into, middle school a little bit. What do you recall thinking back on middle school? Like, did you have, like, a core group of friends, like a couple of guys or gals or whatever? How did what was your socialization like in your early years? Obviously, you're a very social, extroverted person in my whole life that I've known you. I feel like you're
It
the
was an
mayor of
interesting,
any room.
it was like well, that was a transition time for me. Big by the way, I don't know what our time is like. I haven't watched it, but
No, it's okay.
it's
We'll do a
okay.
few more questions. So just keep going and we can.
So I lived in the valley, which was farmers, and we had a school in the valley. So went to middle school, I had to go to town to West Hazleton. And
Mhm.
suddenly I was in a school with most of whom I didn't know. They're
Oh,
my
actually, let me pause you a second because love for you to tell the story of elementary school because I forgot about this is an interesting point that I want you to share if it's okay to come back to middle school for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
Okay. But yeah, you had an interesting experience in elementary school in terms of the building and all and
Yes.
where you
So,
went.
so in Sugarloaf, which was the rural area, and within it's a little town called Cybersville, there were two schools, each of which were one room, and each of which had three grades. And I was in the first to third grade one, and there
Mhm.
was a fourth to sixth grade one, and there was only one teacher. So the way they teach us is we were all the way in the, if you looked from the back toward the front of the classroom where the blackboard was, we
Yeah.
were on the right, we were first grade,
Mhm.
and second grade was in the middle, and then
Okay.
third grade was on the left. So the teacher would meet with first grade and give us stuff to do, and then go to second grade, and then she'd give them things to do, and then she'd go to third grade. Everybody else was in theory working on stuff.
Mhm.
So school was, I don't want to say boring. I liked all of it. It just was so easy that I
Yeah.
ended up in first grade taking all three grades because not officially, you understand.
Yeah.
At the second grade, I'd listen and learn second grade. And then when they do third grade, I'd do third grade. So
Mhm.
second grade went through and I had to do second grade again and third grade again. So when third grade was coming up, I asked on my own because my parents wouldn't have been involved with anything with school.
Mhm.
Dad and mom went to eighth grade and 10th grade. I can't remember who did which.
Yeah. Okay.
But school wasn't a thing to them. But so I said, is there any way that I could like not have to do third grade again? Because I've already done it twice. So could
Mhm.
I go to fourth grade? And
That's
they said,
pretty
oh, they said, no, we don't do that. And I was like,
wow. That's a lot to advocate for yourself that young, Dad. That's impressive.
because nobody else was going to do it. And
I
after a
know,
while,
but just to do it on your own, I think is really impressive. That's cool. I don't
so
know that.
then so in the middle of the year, I remembered it as the roof. When you close the door one time, the ceiling fell down on the head of a school board member, and we got a new school. Lo and behold. However, in fact, the school was already being built, but I didn't realize it. Like that year, we moved to the new school.
Okay.
So we had a brand new modern school. And then I had a third grade with a teacher. And I got my only B. I hadn't ever had a B in school. I had all A's, and so except for behavior and handwriting, which were bad. So
What about behavior? What
I
was
got I
bad?
got C's in behavior, and I got
Why? What were you
B.
doing?
I don't know. I don't know,
Were
but
you like goofing off or something?
I guess. And then I got C's in
Right.
handwriting. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe I didn't always get C's in behavior. I did in handwriting, and I
Okay.
did sometimes in behavior. So
Well, I could see the handwriting thing. I don't think that's totally left you.
not generally disrespectful, but it was just, it was just,
You
I
were
was
bored.
at a different speed, you know what I mean?
You
It
were
was,
bored too, it sounds like, and that's another part of this.
but it was an interesting experience. So, I do want to remember one other thing. So when I was in sixth grade,
Yeah.
this is a story I think I may have told you. I got in a play, and I was a little nervous about being in the play. And my name was a character named Hustle. I don't know what it was, some stupid
Yeah.
little play.
Yeah.
And I was going to be the lead character, and I was like, I don't know. this is like a little nervous. I haven't done this before. I did stuff in church, but not
Mhm.
there. So
Singing and things like that in church, right?
yeah, and I ran across a Reader's Digest. I read anything I could find. And
Mhm.
we, at home, all the books, and then we got books in the library. But somewhere there was a Reader's Digest lying around, and I found an article about uh, self-hypnosis, auto-suggestion. I
Mhm.
looked for that book, trying to find it, because I could figure roughly about a three, because it was probably wasn't the new one. I haven't found it. It was amazing. So I read that book, and it told me how I could get over being nervous about anything. So I went through the process of self-hypnosis, and I told myself not to be nervous when I speak, and I explained how anybody would be nervous, and we're all the same, and we're all same people. And when you're up in front, they would be, so forth and so on. So don't worry if you're not perfect. And when I did all that, ever since then, the rest of my life, I haven't been nervous when I speak in front of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Another cool thing you advocated for yourself on behalf of yourself. That's
It
really
worked.
spectacular. And I love the Reader's Digest. What were your top subjects? Obviously, you did pretty well overall, but what were the ones that you most enjoyed, do you think, in elementary school?
Math and well, elementary school, I guess everything. Math and science in junior high. Um, I was always good at math and science. I remember in high school, so it wasn't perfect, Mo. I mean, in physics, I had a great teacher. I hated memorizing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we had formulas in physics you had to know. And I just said to him, first of all, when it came to homework, I didn't do the regular homework. I just would do the starred problems that were optional. I
Mm-hmm.
would do them, and he was okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it came to the tests, I said, I'm not memorizing the formulas, but I will put down a formula and I'll define every variable. Would that be okay? And he said, sure. So I didn't memorize any of the formulas. I created my own formulas, explained them all, and I got them all right. So it was right, I guess.
Wow, that's pretty incredible to
But I
have.
wasn't, let's say, uh, I probably would have been an easier student for not other people were probably easier. I wasn't routine.
That's really funny. All right, so back to middle school. Um, what do you remember about middle school? We were going into the social part of middle school a little bit, and like, did you have a, group of gang or a group of folks that you hung out with? What was it like?
So recognize, I was trying to say, so I came from the valley, which were mostly farmers. There was a little town called Cunningham and another little town called Cybertsville, but the majority of us we were all farmers.
Hmm.
And so we didn't tend to be scholastic, and we didn't tend to do things that people in town did.
Because
So
families didn't care about that, Dad, correct? They cared about the farming was the priority, and therefore we're not prioritizing the rest of that, right?
that's right. So when I was suddenly I'm in junior high with all these people, and there were Catholics in the school. We were Protestant in the valley.
Hmm.
I mean, I can remember later years when they first built a Catholic church in the valley, and those people were going, "There goes the valley, the
Oh
Catholics are
my
coming."
gosh, that's
It's
crazy.
like this racial thing almost.
Yeah.
So when I was in West Hazel in junior high, there were people that were Catholics. They'd had these marks on their forehead on Ash Wednesday, and
Hmm.
all this other kind of stuff. And then there were others there, and I didn't hardly know any of them, so it was odd after 6 years of knowing everybody and everybody knowing me to be to like know 5% or 10% of the students.
Sure. Yeah.
So I didn't have a crowd initially. As time went along, I gravitated toward the other ones in school that were the good students and became the academic path to go to college, a college path. So going in through junior high and into high school, I ended up being friends more with them. And it created some tensions, I think, with my farm friends at home. We rode the bus together, but we got along okay. I never had any real trouble.
With your farm friends, you mean?
Yeah, because on
Yeah.
the bus, most of them were farmers, and they tended to rouse people up here and there, but that never gave me too much trouble. There was one time I had a fight with somebody, and then nobody ever bothered me again. But I mean, after that,
Did they think you were being a little hoity-toity, like now you're with the smart
I
kids
think
or whatever? I don't know, whatever they
there
would
was
call it.
might have been a little bit of that, but
Yeah.
someone trying to give me trouble, and we had a little fight, and it didn't happen anymore. But after
And so
that,
did you end up developing like one or two real close friends that's stuck with you kind of thing throughout high
from
school?
you mean
From
from
middle
the
school,
valley?
those that group that you're just describing, you kind of
Yeah. There's a group, and right through to the end, there was probably 5 or 6 of us that were guys in particular. and a
Yeah.
couple of girls that were just, we all were the good students. So we had, they were good, a good
Yeah.
time. I, three of us formed a little musical group. I played guitar and sang, and one played the bongos and one played the piano. He was our valedictorian, and we performed for every assembly.
Wow.
I would sit, and my bongo guy would sit on top of the piano, and I would sit on the stage and or play. And then sometimes we would play like Little Darling and other things like that. And some of the president of our class, the football stars, got up on the stage and they did the, with the and they do a
Yeah.
little synchronized, they'd be singing Little Darling, pump, pump, and we'd be playing. So that's something I never even thought about. We just did it. We
That's
did it
so
for
cool.
every assembly. It wasn't at the time I thought anything about it, but
Yeah. Now, did you have a serious, well, now we're moving, okay, so that's middle school, moving into high school. A lot of
yep,
these same people, I would imagine, move with you into high school, right?
yep.
Because you went into town for middle school and you kind of moved right up. Is that right?
That's right. And that musical stuff was high school. That's what that was. But yeah, that's right. So we had an academic, there's an academic track and there are other tracks. I tell Mary at times, so when I graduated, so we had no interest in the family at the house. We didn't talk about college. We didn't talk about academics. We didn't do any of that stuff. So I went to graduation commencement and there was a top 10. I goes, there's a top 10. Oh, I'm not in it. Wait, what is a top 10? And I found out that the top 10 at our school took the top 10 students regardless what program you were in. And some of the people I knew that were in my academic group switched out of it so they could get the higher grade. So
Compared to the other group
yeah,
that they were
some of
in.
those in the top 10 weren't as good a student as I was, for
That's
example.
actually kind of,
But
it's very strategic move at that
they
age, huh?
did. And so they were top 10 and I wasn't. And I was like, I didn't even know there was a top 10. So it was all over. I didn't do that. And so forth. And if we ever get to college, so I also wasn't talking about what college I was going to or anything. I didn't think about. I watch what everybody does these days, mapping it
Yeah.
out, what their strategies were. I just knew I wasn't going to the local Penn State campus, and that was it. But nobody told me anything,
Yeah.
including the counselors. So I don't know what I was thinking. By the time I got out of high school, I wasn't in a college.
But you didn't have that family or immediate day-to-day pressure from anybody to go be something else outside farming is probably what everybody was like, hey, you don't do anything, you're going to do farming. That's the expectation
Right.
kind of thing, right? So what was going back to that time frame, this growing up through your teenage years, what are the kinds of things you might have talked about at the dinner table with Nana and Pap and siblings and whatnot? Was it all business, so to speak, in terms of talking about the farm and whatnot? Or would you, I mean, I couldn't imagine you'd be talking about politics or something like that. I mean,
I mean,
what might you,
if there was anything, maybe there was a little bit about relatives,
oh, okay.
so and so, or this or that.
Right,
It was
right.
a lot. I mean, it wasn't bad, but we were in a world when kids were not supposed to be heard.
Seen or heard.
Yeah, if you're going to be seen, you better not be heard. So
Right.
there wasn't a lot of that. My grandfather was around. We absolutely had to be quiet. We never talked to my grandfather. I can't remember ever having a word with my
This is
grandfather.
Pap's dad, Grandpa
Yep, yep,
Kaufman.
yep, yep. I don't
Okay.
remember ever having a word. I mean, he was gruff and whatever, and you left him
Really?
alone. And so we never talked to him.
Hmm.
He had a reputation. Remember one night at the dinner table, he picked up the salt shaker and it was empty. And he looked at it and he walked over to the door and threw it outside. He says, "That's not worth anything. Doesn't have anything in it." And he sat back down. And grandmother had to go out and get the salt shaker and fill it back up and put it back on the table.
Wow.
So he was a guy, we didn't talk to him at all.
You
So
didn't mess with him. No
didn't
mess
mess
with
with
him.
him. And then, so my dad and mom were better, but my mom spent most of her time during college trying to talk me out of why was I there when I could be working. She
Right.
could not understand it.
Yeah. And I want us to specifically go through your college, how you got in and all the stuff you did, because I think that's such a beautiful story. And relationship with your dad, I know is, I'm gonna use my word, challenging at times, growing up. But was there ever a time you remember it wasn't so challenging? And is that a fair or representation of kind of things I've heard?
I haven't thought of an adjective for it. So my dad was an alcoholic when I was little, and
Mm,
when he was an alcoholic, he was a different person. Now he wasn't violent though. He not
mhm.
never was violent. He just was more,
Extreme quite a bit, right? When you get
yeah, like he wanted me to do things when he had been drinking, like let's go out and shoot, let's go out and shoot rifles, or come over and sit in my lap, let's do this. And
mhm.
I just absolutely freaked out when he did that. Now the shooting, I was okay, I did it, but I was always a little bit on edge during all of that. So
What do
um,
you think that was about, Dad, for you? Was there a lack of safety or a feeling of like this is out of control or something?
I felt afraid of him at the
Yeah,
time,
sure.
but he
That's
never hurt me. He never did.
right.
He would just force me. Like if I want to leave, I couldn't leave.
Mhm.
That was all. I mean, he never was nasty to me, but I kind of wish because he got over it in later in life. That's so impressive. And he went to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and became president of the group in Hazleton.
I
And
mean, that's only something you've told me recently, and it speaks volumes to his leadership and what I just didn't know him that way. Of course, I've seen you lead so many things. You know, you almost wonder where does that come from? And it's interesting to hear Pap had that too. I just didn't know, I was too young to know that side of him almost, you
I
know?
think he was he'd had a couple unfortunate circumstances that messed up his life, and he had to come back to the farm and live and have him and his wife take care of his father, and his brother bought the farm and let him live there in
Mhm.
exchange for him being foreman, and he didn't pay rent, but he didn't get paid a lot. And instead of his life when he started, he had his own garage, and he was drinking, he had an accident, demolished a new car he had, so he had to pay for the car. He couldn't work, he lost his garage, and he was drinking through all that for years, and I don't think he ever recovered. And I think he was unhappy internally because of that. And so he had a lot to offer that probably never got shown. And I often wish I'd have been around enough when I was alert like I am now to learn more
Yeah,
from. I mean,
that's
it was
beautiful.
unfortunate. I mean, there was a time my mom trying to get him to stop drinking. She took us. We fled to her brother's place in the Poconos. He
Yeah.
came looking for us. He
Yeah.
was he was threatening. He never did anything, but
Skinner's Loft, right?
I remember us hiding up in the attic and hear him downstairs yelling, trying to find us, but he didn't know where we were. So,
Dad, that's Skinner's Loft. Is that right? Or no, what was it called? You
oh,
remember?
that's Murphy's Loft now.
Murphy's Loft. It's still there.
It's now Murphy's Loft. It wasn't Murphy's Loft then. It
Oh,
was
okay. All right,
called
fine. The building is there, but it's not the same name.
Murphy's Loft up in the Poconos.
Tannersville, like in Tannersville
It
area.
used to be called what good old Log Cabin and Lodge. Log
It's
Cabin.
amazing.
But that
I
was
love
another.
how you share the story about your dad because you know, obviously when I met Pap, he was um I don't know. Obviously, I met him when I was a baby, but when I recall talking to him, working with him, or engaging with him was probably high school ish. I mean, I remember him as a young kid, but it's not like I hung out with him. But I had a real pull to like want to hear his story. I felt like he wasn't able to say a lot at that time. He wasn't healthy enough to necessarily do it. The smoking and I feel like there was something there medically that was happening for him at that time. Like
I,
mentally, he was good, but he
yeah.
wasn't able to talk consistently or something. I don't remember.
Well, he was on oxygen in his last couple of years, but he had smoked 3.5 packs of Camels a day, worked on a farm, inhaled all the dust and all the sprays,
Pesticides.
all the
God bless
pesticides,
him.
and they couldn't operate on his heart because of his lungs. So there's a whole story in that. But so that's why he was on oxygen. So he died. He was about 80, so he probably died in
He
92.
died my senior year of high school.
92, sound right? Something like
Yeah,
that.
that's right. Yeah. And then how was your relationship with Nana, would you say?
But and so, by the way, I think my dad was really a good guy. I
Yeah.
It's just one of those, you
Yeah.
know, things.
Circumstances,
Yeah, I think I wish
challenging circumstances.
I'd have had 10, 20 years with him when I was more of an adult and able to deal with it all. Because I think
Yeah.
he he put his head down and just got it all done.
Yeah,
He,
he did.
and he just said, "Oh well." But I think, both him and mom would have had better aspirations than they did. But hey, listen, the kids did well. There were four
I,
of us.
I have to say the saddest part of that to hear is that he had a dream that he couldn't fulfill. you know, I mean, how much do I honor him for the responsibility and the accountability and never giving up and just, I mean, that to be a farmer is a really tough life. I mean, and I only saw a small glimpse of it. It's an incredibly challenging life. So,
And he didn't own it. See, he didn't own it. He was
and he
his
didn't even own the
brother.
profits of it or any of that stuff. Yeah.
And it was supposed to be, my mom said it was supposed to be passed on to him when the grandfather died, but instead it went to his brother. So it was this huge disappointment. So he thought he was going to have
Oh,
his farm. So
just
that,
heartbreaking.
yeah, it was crazy times. But so
Tell me about Nana.
mom and I were good. She was a hard worker, and I think she was disappointed too. She expected bigger things.
Hmm.
And her family had been Rittenhouse and Nor. I mean, Nor, her father's family, I mean, they had a dairy and they had a big successful farm, and they built a restaurant up on Nescopec Mountain, which is now called
Was that
Lookout
the Lookout House?
Lookout House. Used to be the Stone Manor Inn. They built that.
Hmm.
They had a store. I mean, they had been relatively, they had a dairy. I mean, so I think she expected to at least do that, and it didn't get to that level. So I think she was disappointed, but she was good. She worked really hard, and very, very good, very much in demand for cleaning houses.
Yeah.
She was, not
Yeah.
everyone could get her. She was,
The way she kept her house was, hashtag goals for all the rest of us
yeah,
in terms of it
yeah,
was never a mess. It was everything that
yeah.
German background, everything's where it's supposed to be. And,
She would can all
make a
kinds of
pie
stuff.
every day and
She'd
make a,
can stuff, and during the winter use it all. And she worked hard. So
yeah,
she was good. So anyhow, that was some
that's,
good situation.
that's
Well,
amazing.
do you think we need to stop?
Yes.
My
So I
timer
think this
says
is,
25 minutes. Does that sound about right? It
what's that?
says 24 minutes and 40 seconds.
I think it's good. And I think what we'll do is why don't we stop here and then you and I can
Okay.
kick up again shortly, if that sounds good.
All right.
So thank you, Dad, first off, for first stage of this and just kind of going through childhood and getting you up to high school. And then I want to explore next time um the journey to college and the experience there and meeting mom and kind of those 20s and
Sure.
see what
That's
comes up from that. I
great.
would like to at some point too, Dad, in the future, a little foreshadowing. I know it's a passion of yours, talk about cars and your car history too. So we'll talk about that in the future as well, because you've had some really neat ones.
I
But
did.
thanks for doing this with me, Dad. It means a lot. I appreciate it.
It's fun, Mo. It's-
Okay.
Okay.
Love you. And
Well,
we'll look forward to doing this again very soon.
we will.
Okay.
Okay.
Talk to you soon. Bye, Dad.
There we go. We're off.
Okay, good.
That was
Perfect.
pretty good. A little bit
I
long.
thought that was great. I mean, if you told me that was an hour, I would have felt like it was an hour. We went through a lot of good stuff, Dad.
We did. Yeah, 23. Oh, I stopped the video. Wait, I didn't.
No, you stopped the video. Did you stop the record? Oh, no, stop the record.